It was the naming deal that rocked the European football world and redefined sponsorship, transforming Manchester City into a global powerhouse and setting new standards for sports marketing. Manchester City is probably the most recognizable name in sports no matter where you are in the world, but it wasn't always so. Before 2008, Manchester City had a proud history and a loyal fan base, but it was not a global powerhouse. City had endured regulations, financial struggles, and fairly long stretches without major trophies. Even after the team moved into the modern city of Manchester City, originally built for the 2002 Commonwealth Games, the club simply lacked the resources to consistently attract top players or compete with giants like Manchester United, Arsenal, or Chelsea. But all of that changed dramatically in 2008, when the Abu Dhabi United Group purchased the club.
Man City was available for us, and Man City has a special thing to the Manchester people, the fans, the people in Manchester, the people in the UK. They really love the Man City.
Practically overnight, Manchester City gained access to the financial resources that allow it to dream bigger and be bigger than ever before. The new owners wanted more than just victories on the pitch. They wanted to build a modern football organization with world-class facilities, global branding, and a sustainable long-term structure. For the team, the takeover was a turning point. Suddenly, Manchester City had the means to pursue top players, hire elite staff, and invest in infrastructure. But money from ownership alone was not enough. To comply with UEFA's financial rules and to build a sustainable model, Manchester City needed major commercial revenue streams, and that's where Etihad Airways entered the chat. Founded in 2003, Etihad Airways was the national airline of the United Arab Emirates. Etihad grew quickly and invested heavily in international marketing. The UAE government wanted to diversify the economy beyond oil, and promoting Abu Dhabi abroad, especially through global sports, was a key part of that plan. Sponsorships became a way to project national identity and economic ambition onto the global stage. By 2011, the interests of both Manchester City and Etihad Airways aligned perfectly. Manchester City wanted global exposure and commercial growth. Etihad wanted brand recognition and visibility in Europe, Asia, and North America. Both shared ties to Abu Dhabi. The stage was set for a massive partnership that would ultimately reshape football sponsorship.
We are delighted to announce a 10-year extension of our partnership with Etihad Airways.
After Manchester City announced its partnership with Etihad Airways in 2011, the headlines focused on the stadium renaming. The City of Manchester Stadium, originally built for the 2002 Commonwealth Games and later home to Manchester City, was renamed Etihad Stadium. For many fans, this was the most visible and striking change. A corporate brand replaced a long-standing civic name, but that was only the tip of the iceberg. In England, it had always been customary for stadium names to be tied to local history or geography. For example, Arsenal played at Highbury, Liverpool at Anfield, Manchester United at Old Trafford. Corporate naming rights were something that was only common in American sports, like AT&T Park, Gillette Stadium, or the Staples Center. But Europeans often resisted strict changes in favor of preserving traditions. But by rebranding the City of Manchester Stadium the Etihad Stadium, Manchester City signaled a willingness to embrace the commercial model more fully. The name was not just a logo on a facade, it became part of the club's identity, repeated in broadcasts, printed on tickets, and spoken by fans worldwide. Equally important was the shirt sponsorship, and the best way to show off a sponsorship is to put it on just about everything the team and the fans wear. It guarantees visibility in every match, every highlight reel, and every photograph. Etihad Airways became the front of shirt sponsor, placing its name on the Manchester City kits worn by millions of fans and broadcasted in nearly every country. For Etihad, this was a marketing coup. The airline's name was now associated with one of the fastest rising clubs in Europe, a team competing in the Premier League, which is the most watched football league in the world. For Manchester City, the deal provided a steady stream of revenue and a global brand partner. Perhaps the most innovative part of the deal was actually naming the entire sports complex. The area surrounding the stadium, which stretched from the training grounds and youth academy to the offices and community facilities, was rebranded as the Etihad campus. It was one of the first sponsorship agreements to extend naming rights beyond a single venue and instead encompass an entire district. It signaled a shift in how clubs and corporations imagine the scope of branding, turning physical space into a living advertisement and cultural landmark. The Etihad campus quickly became a symbol of Manchester City's ambition. It was not simply a place for the first team to train, it evolved into a multi-layer hub of activity. Youth development programs flourished there, giving local talent a direct pathway into professional football. Women's football gained a dedicated home, reinforcing the club's commitment to inclusivity and growth. Sports science and medical research facilities were integrated into the complex, ensuring the innovation innovation and performances were woven into the daily routine. Equally important was the community dimension. The campus housed outreach initiatives, educational programs, and recreational spaces that connected the club to its neighbors in tangible ways. By attaching its name to this entire ecosystem, Etihad embedded itself not only into professional identity of Manchester City, but also the social fabric of East Manchester. The brand became part of everyday life. It became visible in grassroots training sessions, community events, and the rhythms of local development. The sponsorship agreement also carried extensive marketing and advertising rights, ensuring that the Etihad brand was woven into the fabric of Manchester City's identity. The airline's name and logo appeared prominently around the stadium and training facilities. It was visible on pitch-side boards, digital screens, and even training kits. Match days became a showcase not only for football, but for the partnership itself, with millions of viewers unable to escape the Etihad brand through broadcasts that reached far beyond Manchester. Joint global advertising campaigns amplified this visibility. Television commercials, glossy magazine spreads, and social media pushes featured star players alongside Etihad crews, blending the imagery of travel along with the drama of football. The campaigns were multilingual and multinational, designed to resonate in diverse markets from Europe to Asia. They reinforced the idea that flying with Etihad meant sharing in the spectacle of Manchester City's rise, turning the airline into a lifestyle brand rather than just a mere service provider. But perhaps the most noticeable element of the partnership was the creation of special aircraft liveries. Manchester City's crest and sky blue colors were painted onto planes flying international routes. They essentially became flying billboards. For passengers, boarding such an aircraft was a reminder that football and aviation had been fused into one because of the deal. The planes carried the club's identity into airports from Abu Dhabi to New York, extending the reach of both the organization into spaces far removed from the Premier League. These campaigns were not just about visibility, they were about association. Etihad sought to be seen as more than just an airline. It wanted to embody the excitement, glamour, and global reach of football itself. In turn, Manchester City benefited from the airline's international network, gaining exposure in airports, lounges, and markets across the world. The advertising rights transformed both organizations into co-authors of a shared brand identity, blurring the line between travel and sport, commerce and culture. The price tag on the Etihad deal is where information about the deal starts to get murky and begins years' worth of controversy. The exact figures were never disclosed by Manchester City, and estimates vary depending on the source. Many reports place the value at around 400 million euros over a 10-year period, though many critics question whether the sponsorship was inflated beyond its true market worth. The lack of transparency fueled speculation, yet regardless of the precise amount, the agreement was immediately recognized as one of the largest and most ambitious in the history of sports sponsorship. In order to understand its scale, it helps to compare with earlier deals considered landmarks. Arsenal's Emirates agreement in 2004 was valued at roughly 100 million euros, covering both shirt sponsorship and stadium naming rights. Bayern Munich's Allianz deal was estimated at around 90 million for stadium naming alone. These figures were considered significant at the time, but the Etihad partnership dwarfed them. By stretching into the hundreds of millions, it set a new benchmark for what clubs could demand from corporate partners. The financial scale of the deal also carried symbolic weight. It signaled Manchester City's arrival as a global powerhouse, capable of attracting investment on a level previously reserved for the most established clubs. For the sponsorship industry, it marked a turning point, demonstrating the naming rights and shirt deals could be leveraged together to create unprecedented value. In this way, the Etihad agreement was not only a financial milestone, but a redefinition of what modern football partnerships could achieve. The deal was a badly needed lifeline for Manchester City. The club needed large commercial revenue streams to comply with UEFA's financial fair play rules. Ownership investment alone could not sustain the level of spending required to compete with the Europe's elite. The Etihad deal provided funding not only for much-needed infrastructure, but the money to buy top players without breaking financial rules, a global branding identity, and long-term stability with a partner committed to more than just short-term gains. By partnering with a global airline, Manchester City signaled it was a serious player in the commercial side of football. But with Etihad Airways, the partnership was equally strategic. The airline needed visibility in Europe, Asia, and North America. It was competing with Emirates and Qatar Airways, both of which had already invested heavily in football sponsorships. The Manchester City partnership offered worldwide broadcasting reach, brand recognition through association with a rising football powerhouse, access to fans through kits and stadium branding, and alignment with Abu Dhabi's global strategy. Etihad was not just sponsoring a club, it was sponsoring a project. Manchester City was rapidly rising, and the airline wanted to be a part of that story. Both Manchester City and Etihad Airways were part of Abu Dhabi's broader push to strengthen its global presence. Sports allowed this to happen in a subtle, positive way through entertainment, tourism, and cultural influence. But of course, the connection is also one reason why the deal has faced so much scrutiny. The critics argue that the sponsorship was essentially a way for Abu Dhabi to inject money into the club indirectly. Supporters countered that the deal was fair market value, given the exposure and success that followed. By far, the most immediate impact of the Etihad deal was financial, though. Manchester City needed commercial revenue streams to comply with UEFA's financial fair play rules, which required clubs to keep their books balanced. An ownership investment alone could not sustain the level of spending required to compete with Europe's elite clubs. The Etihad deal provided a steady and sustainable flow of income, with estimates placing its value around 400 million euros over the next 10 years. Regardless of the precise amount, the deal gave Manchester City the financial muscle to pursue world-class players, build infrastructure, improve its academy, and hire top executives and coaching staff. It wasn't just about being able to have the capital to spend, though. It was about long-term sustainability. By securing a long-term commercial partner, Manchester City could plan for the future with confidence. And while money alone doesn't win matches, it certainly helps create conditions for success. The proof was evident not long after the Etihad deal, as Manchester City's performance improved dramatically. The club dominated the Premier League, winning multiple titles and establishing itself as one of the most consistent teams in England. Domestic cups soon followed, adding depth to the trophy cabinet, and eventually Manchester City captured the Champions League, the ultimate prize in European football. Of course, the sponsorship didn't directly score goals, but it enabled the team to assemble squads capable of competing at the highest level. The partnership also propelled Manchester City onto the global stage. With the Premier League's worldwide audience and Etihad's international roots, both companies promoted each other. The club embarked on pre-season tours in Asia, North America, and the Middle East, expanding its fan base and showcasing the Etihad brand. Airports across continents displayed Manchester City imagery, reinforcing the connection between the airline and the club. Joint advertising campaigns featured players alongside Etihad branding, while merchandise became available in more countries than ever before. Manchester City transformed from a respected English club into a global brand, comparing to Manchester United, Real Madrid, and Barcelona. The Etihad partnership was central to this evolution, providing this visibility and marketing infrastructure needed to reach international audiences. By far, one of the most visible results of the entire deal was the development of the Etihad campus. The massive sports complex became a symbol of Manchester City's ambition and a model for modern football infrastructure. It included elite training pitches for the first team, a youth academy designed to nurture potential future talent, facilities for the women's team, medical and sports science buildings, an athletics track for the local community, most importantly, education and outreach centers. The scale of the project set it apart from traditional training grounds. Rather than serving only the professional squad, the campus was designed as a multi-purpose environment where elite performance and community engagement could coexist. The Youth Academy provided a clear pathway for local players to rise through the ranks, while the women's team gained access to facilities equal in quality to those of the men. The medical and sports science buildings reinforced Manchester City's reputation for innovation, ensuring that research and performance analysis was embedded into daily routines. Equally significant was the community dimension. The athletics track and outreach centers opened the doors of a complete complex to local residents, making the campus a shared civic space rather than a closed professional enclave. Educational programs, recreational opportunities, and grassroots football initiatives gave the project a social purpose, strengthening ties between the club and the city it represents. The Etihad campus is now considered one of the best football training complexes in the world. It represents a holistic approach to club development that integrates professional performance with community engagement. More than bricks and mortar, it stands as a physical embodiment of Manchester City's ambition to be both a global powerhouse and a local institution, blending success on the pitch with responsibility beyond it. It wasn't just Etihad and Manchester City that benefited from the epic partnership. The community saw a significant boost to the economy as well. The area around the stadium had long been one of the most economically depressed parts of the city. The Etihad deal and subsequent investment brought significant change. Construction and operations created new jobs. Infrastructure improvements made the area more accessible. Housing and business opportunities revitalized the local economy. Partnerships with schools and community programs provided resources and opportunities for young people. While not everyone agrees on every effect, it was hard to deny the area had significantly improved the area that was there before the campus saw significant upgrades. The Etihad campus became a catalyst for urban regeneration, blending football emotion and ambition with civic development. Of course, with every major financial deal, there was bound to be some form of controversy. From the moment the Etihad agreement was announced, questions arose about whether the sponsorship was truly worth the figures being reported. With estimates of 400 million euros over 10 years, the deal stood far above comparable agreements in Europe. Because both Manchester City and Etihad Airways were linked to Abu Dhabi, detractors suggested the sponsorship bypassed financial restrictions and allowed Abu Dhabi to inject money into the club indirectly. Supporters countered the criticism by pointing out the exposure Etihad gained, combined with the city's rapid rise, justifying the valuation. They argued that the partnership was not simply about immediate trophies, but about positioning the airline alongside a club that was transforming into a global powerhouse. The visibility achieved through stadium branding, shirt sponsorship, and international campaigns gave Etihad a reach that few other airlines could match. But the debate over whether the deal represented fair market value was never fully subsided. For some, the sponsorship remains a symbol of how financial fair play regulations can be tested by creative corporate arrangements. For others, it is proof that ambitious clubs can attract unprecedented investment when paired with partners seeking global recognition. It wasn't just the public that thought the deal was questionable, though. The controversy intensified under UEFA's financial fair play rules, which require clubs to spend only what they earn. If a sponsorship is inflated, it artificially increases income and allows clubs to spend well beyond their means. For years, UEFA questioned whether Manchester City's sponsorships, especially the Etihad agreement, were fairly valued. In 2014, Manchester City was fined for violations of FFP regulations, but the scrutiny didn't end there.
Manchester City are to be punished for breaking financial rules in football, and they have been banned from all UEFA competition.
In 2020, UEFA escalated the matter by handling the club a 2-year Champions League ban, citing sponsorship revenue claims among other issues. The decision was dramatic, threatening to exclude City from Europe's most prestigious competition and casting doubt on the legitimacy of its financial practices. Manchester City immediately appealed the ban to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. The court overturned the punishment, ruling that UEFA lacked sufficient evidence and that parts of the case were time-barred. This reversal was celebrated by the club and its supporters, but it also highlighted the difficulty regulators face in proving financial manipulation. The case demonstrated how complex sponsorship agreements can blur the line between genuine commercial value and strategic accounting. The episode reinforced the scrutiny surrounding the Etihad deal and underscored the broader challenge of enforcing financial fair play. To critics, the overturned ban showed how powerful clubs can resist regulation through legal channels. To supporters, it proved that Manchester City had not broken the rules and that UEFA's case was flawed. Either way, the controversy became a defining moment in the debate over fairness, transparency, and accountability in modern football finance. The investigations into the deal have stretched across several years, reflecting both the complexity of modern football finance and the difficulty of enforcing clear standards in a globalized sport. The Etihad agreement, because of its scale and visibility, became a focal point for questions about whether sponsorships were being used to artificially inflate revenue streams. Critics argue that the prolonged inquiry highlighted the weakness in the system, suggesting that clubs could push the boundaries of financial fair play without immediate consequence. They point to the opacity of sponsorship valuations and the potential for related party transactions to distort the market. Supporters counter that the absence of definitive punishment demonstrates compliance, or at least the inability of regulators to prove wrongdoing. To them, the investigation underscores how difficult it is to separate genuine commercial value from strategic partnerships in a sport that thrives on global exposure. Beyond the obvious financial questions, the Etihad deal had been accused of being part of a broader strategy of sports washing. The term might not be familiar to most Americans unless they follow politics as much as European football, but quite simply the term refers to the use of sports sponsorships to improve a country's global image and soften political criticism. Abu Dhabi's involvement in Manchester City and Etihad's prominent role has been cited as examples of this phenomenon. But for many critics, the sponsorship was less about football and more about projecting a positive image of the UAE. But supporters note that Western corporations and governments have done the same thing for similar purposes. Regardless if you were a supporter or critic of the deal, it was difficult to deny its influence. After the agreement, clubs across Europe began demanding more money for naming rights and shirt sponsorships. Arsenal's Emirates deal, Bayern Munich's Allianz partnership, and Barcelona's Qatar Airways sponsorship were all compared against City's agreement. The deal also introduced the concept of campus-wide branding. By naming the entire Etihad campus, Manchester City had created a model that other clubs soon copied not long after. Tottenham Hotspur developed a stadium district with integrated branding. Juventus expanded its facilities with corporate partnerships. Bayern Munich built the Allianz campus. What began in Manchester triggered a domino effect that became a blueprint for modern football infrastructure. And because there was so much scrutiny regarding the deal, it also led to significant changes in financial regulations. Football authorities tightened rules around related party transactions, meaning deals involving companies linked to the club owners. Much of this was a reaction to sponsorships like Etihad's, which blurred the line between commercial agreements and ownership support. The deal forced regulators to confront the complexities of modern football finance. The questions regarding whether the Etihad deal represented fair market value remains unresolved to this day. On one hand, sponsorships across the industry grew after the agreement, suggesting that the city's deal set a new standard. On the other hand, the links between Etihad and Abu Dhabi raised concerns about whether the sponsorship really was artificially inflated. The deal also raises ethical questions about state involvement in club finance, transparency and sponsorship value, and whether football fairness is even achievable when ownership levels vary so widely. For some, the Etihad deal symbolizes the commercialization of football to the point where tradition and fairness are essentially compromised, but for others, it represents smart business and the inevitable evolution of the sport. On a local level, the partnership did bring jobs, brought about urban regeneration, better facilities, and global visibility for Manchester. But on a broader level, it raised concerns about corporate dominance in sports, gentrification pressures, and the risk of the club identity becoming too commercialized. These debates reflect larger issues in modern football: how to balance financial growth with tradition, community, and fairness. Without question, the Etihad naming deal stands as a landmark moment in football sponsorship, illustrating both the transformative power and the complex challenges of modern sports marketing. It propelled Manchester City from a struggling club to a global brand, fueled by unprecedented financial investment and innovative branding strategies. Yet the deal also sparked debates about fairness, transparency, and the ethical implications of state-linked sponsorships in sports. As football continues to evolve, the legacy of the Etihad partnership serves as a powerful case study in balancing commercial ambition with sporting integrity and community impact.